I went from $8.75 an hour to $250 an hour when I became a full-time freelance artist. My name is Priscilla Perez. Thank you so much for being here. Welcome, fellow creatives and beautiful souls. In this channel, I wish to inspire anyone that has been thinking about leading a more creative life. Anyone that might feel like they have a creative spark that lies dormant. Anyone that is an artist and wants to continue to improve and excel and really build a life filled with art. And anyone that doesn't think that they're an artist, but they're truly fascinated by the idea and perhaps feels like it might amplify your life or it might do you some good. Here you are. Thank you so much for being here. And so, as many of you might know, I have restarted this channel. I have decided a few weeks ago to put more energy into my YouTube and to really put a lot of soul and spirit into this channel and give you guys what I got. I want to put out as much value as I can. And since restarting, I figured I want to share more of my creative journey and my creative path. You know, recently in the last few days, I've personally had people reach out to me and ask me about what it feels like to be a full-time creative. And I'm seeing that people are actually curious and they're inspired and they want to learn more and they want to know more. And so today in this video, I have put together for you a little bit about my story where I share with you how I went from $8.75 an hour to $250 an hour. So I'm going to share with you the early stages, the early parts of my art journey. And then I'm going to share with you guys a part in my life where I felt lost and confused. And then what it took for me to rediscover my art and rediscover my purpose. I'm going to share with you a pivotal moment where I had a breakthrough and I was experiencing lots of success. And then I'm going to share with you guys how I've been redirecting my focus more recently in the last few years to art teaching and personal growth. So to begin, we're going to have to go all the way to 2007. Okay, this is where it all kind of began. And my very first job, well, second job, okay, but my first job where I started to express myself artistically was when I was working at Starbucks. Anybody else worked here at Starbucks before? I feel like there's been lots of people who have been a barista at some point in their life. So I started working there when I was 21 years old. Okay, that dates me now, huh? And I was making coffee and eventually I became a shift supervisor. I was in the company for seven years. And in those 7 years, pretty quickly, I started creating chalkboard art for them. And so if you guys remember back in the days, because they don't do this anymore, there used to be a chalkboard, at least one, that would have the promotional item. They would have their specialty drink. Every few months, they would change what their special drink was depending on the season and the time of year. And so I came in as a person that would change the board. The board was called the Daily Offerings Board, the DOB. And I started doing it at my store. And once they saw and once they thought like, hey, she's good, they started sending me around to a bunch of stores. And so I quickly became the artist, the store artist, the district artist. And this was back in New York City where I lived for most of my life. I lived there till I was 29. And so in New York City, if you guys know anything about New York City and Starbucks, there's about a Starbucks almost in every corner in Manhattan. And so it was very easy for me to cover lots of stores. My friends, I had no idea then, but what that was me mastering my craft. Okay, so I'm going to say right here, for you as an artist, as a creative, as someone that has a passion, someone that has an interest, whatever that thing is that lights you up, stick to it and master it. Become really good at it. Do whatever it takes to learn as much as possible about the thing and become the expert, become a master, be really confident in that thing. And so for me, just the way that life panned out, because I was able to do so many Starbucks stores for 7 years, every 3 months they were changing their drink. And one district has about 10 stores. And sometimes I would do 2 districts. So they would give me a few days in the week. So I created a lot of chalkboard lettering. I worked on a lot of compositions, the layouts, the way that they're visually put together. In a short amount of time, I was able to do a ton. I mean, if I did the math, I haven't even done the math, but that's like thousands of chalkboards in 7 years. That's a lot of practice, my friends. Practicing and just keep going at it. Okay, whatever the thing is. So I didn't know that that's what was happening. I was just doing it because I loved it. I was good at it. And you know what? At the end of the day, for me, it was nicer to go into work and just come and do the chalkboard rather than making a whole bunch of drinks and doing all the other things that I was doing all the time. And so at that time, Starbucks was paying $8.75 an hour. And within the 7 years, even with the up leveling, I forget how you say it, becoming a promotion, becoming a shift supervisor, I think the most I ever made was $12.75. And the way that I was doing the artwork was I would clock in and I would clock out. And so after so many years, like the quantity of chalkboards that I created there, I became really fast at it. Like I could whip up one of those chalkboards in 20 to 30 minutes. So I got really good and I got really fast. So this is very important too for the story. Okay. This is how the 250 comes later, the fast piece. So high quality, high quantity. Boom. That right there, my friend. So I would do these chalkboards and I absolutely loved it. And people would compliment me and I could see my progress and I would get better at the lettering, right? And it was such a public performance art. So it was really interesting because I would be in front of a bunch of other faces and a bunch of other eyes. And then I would be in conversation with people because they would gravitate towards me and they want to, have these conversations about their art and their creativity. And a lot of the times, I gotta say, there was a lot of sadness around that topic. Most of the conversations were people feeling sad that they had not been creative in a long time, or artistic in a long time, or that they miss it, or that they feel like they are not it. So many people would tell me, I am not creative. I wish I was. Little did they know they actually are creative. Everyone is creative, okay? If you're a human with a brain, you are creative. Woo! So a really important piece to this also was the visualization and the imagination, okay? In all of that time, I used to imagine that I could get paid like an artist. I used to think to myself, hold on a second, isn't this like a job? Isn't this like a thing that some people do out there as their main thing? What if I was able to do that? What if I could nix off this coffee making thing and whatever else I was trying to do? I usually would work 2 or 3 jobs living in New York City. And so I would start to visualize what would that be like if I could actually do this full time and actually get paid like a real artist, which I didn't even know what that meant. I didn't know how much an artist charges, but I somehow felt and knew that I would be better off, that I would be really enjoying my life, and that I would be making more than $8 or $12 an hour. So that piece is also important, right? The visualization, the imagination, and feeling into what it would feel like if it was present right here, right now. Manifestation, right? So I didn't know that that's what I was doing then. I had no idea about anything about manifestation, visualization. I had no words for these kinds of things. But that is what I was doing. Here's the part where I felt lost and confused, and all the way to the point where I got sick. And it was about the age of 23. And at that point, I had been working just since I was 18, I had been working at least 2, maybe 3 jobs. So I was putting lots of hours in to clocking in and clocking out on someone else's, time, on someone else's agreements, and, whatever the hourly wage was, which was never that great. I think one of the jobs was paying me $10 as opposed to the $8.75. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is great. Wow. More than $1 more than my other job. So I came from a family that had worked lots of jobs where you clock in and you clock out, and their hourly wages was just really not that great. And so looking back now, I mean, that's all I knew. And that's what I created for myself in my 20s. And so it came to a point where I had a panic attack. And I was confused. Like, why did I just have a panic attack? I didn't know it was a panic attack until I went to the hospital and they explained to me what it was. But it was me feeling really weak in the knees at 4:00 in the morning when I woke up one day to open at Starbucks. I had to be there by 5:30. I felt weak in the knees. I had nausea, and my entire being was shaking. My heart was racing, and it was a very scary moment for me. So I went to the hospital, and then I learned what that was. And when I heard what that was, I didn't really ever consider myself being a stressful person. I never really thought. I would hear the word stress and anxiety, and I'd be like, that's not me. I'm never stressed out. I am not an anxious person. But I think I just really wasn't aware. I really wasn't aware of what my internal was experiencing. I was not meditating. I was not journaling. I was not taking any time for self-care. I really didn't have any of these tools. I didn't have any of these words to even start that journey, you know? So without realizing it, I was living in a state of anxiety, and I was living in a state of stress a lot. And of course I was always trying to figure out how to pay my rent. I was always trying to make ends meet. And I didn't know that I was experiencing stress. It was just this like constant struggle that I was so used to. It was my comfort zone, even though it was so uncomfortable. That panic attack was a wake-up call. It was a wake-up call at the age of 23. Like, what am I doing with my life? It had me ask these questions to myself that I probably wouldn't have asked otherwise. I would have just kept going on this hamster wheel. And so I'm really grateful now that, of course, that it happened, because it really had me reflect on these important and deep issues that I didn't even know were there. And so when I asked myself, what is my purpose and what am I doing here? And I can't just work like this for the rest of my life. There has to be another way. There has to be another way. And I would look around me, and then I'd watch these movies of people having these jobs and doing these things. And I would hear of the other friends of a friend who does this for work and that for work. And I was just like, why am I doing this? Like, how do I get out of this? What is it that I want to do? And actually at that point in time, I chose to go to culinary school. And that was my answer. The doctors had told me, hey, you get to see a therapist. And I'm like, okay, yeah, I actually never seen a therapist. Sounds great. Sign me up. The other thing they said was, we can give you prescription to some antidepressants and get you on some meds. That right there had me say, you know what? I'm going to choose something else as my medicine. If they're saying that I might need some medicine, I am going to choose culinary school as my medicine. You see what I'm saying? And like, I'm so proud of myself for deciding on that. I told myself by the end of this year, I am going to be in culinary school. And for me, that was tough because I had to come up with the enrollment fee, and I had to come up with how am I going to pay, my loans, and just even put myself into that, right? How could I put my mindset into like, okay, I'm going into this and I get to believe in it and I'm going to make it happen somehow, right? I mean, I don't have any financial support. I've never have. It's always been me doing me and figuring it out on my own. And so I signed up for culinary school that year, and the first day of school was December 30th, 2009, 2 days before the new year. So it was just so cool to meet that goal that I had declared just by a little, just a couple days. I had been obsessed with Food Network. I had been working at the farmer's market for a few years at that point. That was one of my other jobs. So I had surrounded myself with so much delicious food. I was experimenting at home with different ingredients that I would bring from the local farmers markets. I would be in conversation with so many people about food. I even worked at Trader Joe's for a little while, and so I was talking about food all the time, and I was obsessed. And when the idea came to me, like, what if I worked with food? That lit me up inside. Like, it felt so good. It felt so exciting. And when I went to the French Culinary Institute and I walked through those doors for my first school tour, I had goosebumps. Like, I could just feel, I had this feeling like, oh my God, this is it right here. This is my next step. This is my answer. And so while I have been a visual artist my entire life, I grew up with a father who was a graffiti legend from Brooklyn. That's another story for another video. And he inspired me to be an artist. He shared his passion, his love for art and lettering with me at the age of 2. So from a very early age, I've been an artist. I did not really, it was kind of unexpected and a surprise to me that I wanted to put all my focus and energy into cooking and food. And it was a delightful surprise, you know? And I actually ended up graduating from their pastry arts program. So I am a classically trained pastry chef from the French Culinary Institute. And that was an amazing journey. That was 9 months of doing school part-time, working as a shift supervisor at Starbucks, and just go, go, go. But it was so fulfilling and such an amazing experience, and I'm so proud of myself for doing that. Okay, so fast forward into the future. After I've graduated culinary school, I actually stayed working at Starbucks because for some reason it looked like Starbucks was going to pay me more than working as a pastry cook at any restaurant. Restaurants were paying $11 an hour, and at Starbucks I was already a shift supervisor, so I was making $12.75. So I'm like, well, I have the school loan I get to pay, and I'm just going to keep working at Starbucks, because monetarily it made a little more sense. So that's what I did for a while. And I gotta say, a little guilt started settling in after some time, after some years passed, because I felt like I wasn't doing anything with my pastry degree, with my culinary education. And, you know, parents and other people would ask me, hey, what are you doing with the pastry that you learned? And I just kept working at that point, and I really didn't know how things would all come together or how they would all fit, but I just kept working at Starbucks, and then another job, and then another job. So I kind of went back into that pattern again until one day Starbucks fired me. Just like that, they fired me. I had made some mistakes. There was some discrepancies in certain things that needed to be recorded. There were days where it'd get so busy and I was a little bit scatterbrained sometimes, and I forgot to do some details that needed to be recorded and were very important. And I had done the mistake a couple of times until the third time, and they were like, well, it looks like we gotta let you go. And I was heartbroken, and I was like, wow, all this time with this company, and then wabam. But I mean, they did it very respectfully, and you know what, I get it, but it was definitely tough to be leaving this company after being there for so long. But of course, looking back now, what a blessing, because who knows, maybe I would have still been there. And so I had left the company, and it took a few years after being gone and not working at Starbucks anymore. It took a few years for one of my shift supervisors to reach back out to me and say, hey, I'm seeing some amazing art that you're doing, and I want you to come to my store and do some of that art for us. I'm like, really? Like an artist? It turns out that an old manager had seen some work that I was doing with someone that hired me off of Craigslist. I was looking for an art assistant job, and I ended up working for someone to help them do mural paintings for the holidays. And an old store manager saw my artwork that I was doing for these window paintings for this guy that I found on Craigslist, and she asked me to come back and do their chalkboards. But this time, I was getting paid like an artist. So what I had dreamed about for all of those years and what I had envisioned for myself was finally becoming true. And it took Starbucks to come back into my life, but in a new way. And so from that point on, things had changed and shifted so completely in my life. And my breakthrough moment was it took like, I don't even know how many stores, but it probably took hundreds of stores. Now as an artist, now that I was coming back in just to do the chalkboards, I would walk into a store and say, "Hi, can I speak to the manager?" And they would say, "Well, yeah, but who are you?" And I would say, "Well, I'm Priscilla and I'm here to do your chalkboard." And then they would turn around and be like, "Hey, Priscilla the artist is here." It took like 100 of strangers to say, "Priscilla the artist is here," for it to click inside of me and finally realize, oh, that is my purpose. That is who I am. I am an artist. And it was so clear as day, and it was so simple because that's who I was since I was a child. That was my whole first part of my life experience. Through my entire childhood, I was encouraged and empowered as an artist. My family they were all artists, my brother and sister. My mom and dad were always like champions for my creativity. I was so blessed to have that kind of experience. But somewhere in there in my 20s, when I became an adult and I started working and things got really serious and I had to pay my bills and I had to figure out all these things that are here on this earth plane that society creates, I forgot the part that I'm actually an artist and that I can live like an artist and I can be in my fullest expression as an artist. I mean, I'm still kind of learning that last part today, right now. And it was just so amazing to really, like, I remember that moment when it clicked, when that 100th person said it. Maybe it was a tone in their voice, the look on their face, whatever it took for that moment to happen, that my whole inside just went, wow. And a light bulb went ding. And I was like, oh, okay. And I rediscovered my purpose and I rediscovered my art. And I was like, this is it. I really got anchored in the truth of who I am. And then from that point on, it's been choosing what that looks like. You know, it's been choosing how I get to express that in its fullest form. It's been choosing, what does God want to express through me next as an artist, right? Because life just keeps growing and evolving, and I just keep going with the flow and seeing where it goes. So my friends, from the year 2007 all the way up to I would say 2019, I was freelance arting, full-time arting, all of that for all that time, creating chalkboards, murals, window paintings for all kinds of businesses, mostly like restaurants and coffee shops, and some were boxing clubs and gyms and things like that as well. And so there's a ton more to my story and a bunch of other fun and important values in my story as well that I'll be sharing in the next videos. But one of them is going to be how I've been refocusing and putting my energy more towards art teaching and personal development and personal growth through art. And that has been such an exciting journey. I'm really excited to share with you guys where I'm taking that, how I'm going to be creating spaces in the future for you to work with me, for opportunities for us to go deeper. And I'm seeing the value that it has for me to be able to work with the children, with my inner child, and play and the curiosities and the just like lightheartedness of that, but then also come to the adults where I can really go deep and get into the rich conversations of all these different topics and concepts, and talking about the artist's mindset and the creative mindset and how we could really open ourselves to our inner artist and ignite that creative spark that's inside of us. Because with the adults, I find that a lot of people want to reconnect with their creative spark. So it's been a really exciting journey. Thank you so much for being here. I hope that this whole video has brought you some value. I hope that it has inspired you. I hope that with my story, I can show you a testament of what it looks like when you truly cultivate creativity in your life and the fulfillment that you could truly have in your life when you are in touch with your fullest expression and your authentic true self and who you're really truly meant to be on this planet. leave a comment below. Let me know what you think of this video. Let me know if any of this resonates. Let me know if there's any messages in here for you with my story, and hit that like button and hit the subscribe button. Do all the things. Thank you so much for your support, my friends. I'm so grateful that you're here. I'm so grateful that I get to sit in my backyard in front of these beautiful plants here in Miami and just chit chat with my phone and know that I'm going to reach a ton of people. So again, thank you so much. And my wish for you is that you could figure out what that thing is for you, okay? It doesn't have to be art. It doesn't have to be chalk lettering or murals or window paintings like I did. Hey, I just cut the video right here so I can throw this little snippet in because I think that I skipped over it while I was in the excitement of sharing my story and everything. But what I want to say right now is there's the part where I made $250 an hour, right? Like, Priscilla, how did you get there? Yeah, let me tell you. Because remember in the earlier part of this story, I shared with you guys that it was high quality and high quantity work that I was doing. That high quantity stuff, man, because I was really fast at this type of art, because I got really good at the window paintings and the chalkboard art, I was able to book jobs where I would say, okay, that's going to cost you $500. Because I would imagine, okay, that should probably take me this amount of time, and then I would charge them for whatever I guesstimated for my time was. And sometimes I was a little off. And when I was a little off, sometimes I would, work a little bit longer than I had imagined, but there were the times where I would work a shorter amount of time. And so if I'm charging someone $500 or $600 and then I finish the job in 2 hours, and then the materials only cost me X amount of dollars, I'm making $200 to $250 in that hour of labor. And so because I knew that I was able to create, this big of an artwork in this amount of time, then I could charge my client a certain amount, and then I could walk away with a good amount of money per hour. Do you know what I'm saying? So it all depends on you, and it all depends on how you want to pay yourself and what you want to charge and what the market is for what it is that you do. I'm not giving any business advice or job advice or work advice or things like that. But I'm just sharing with you guys what was available to me, what had happened in my life, and perhaps it can open your mind to a new possibility. Perhaps what I share with what happened in my life, it can open up a door for a new possibility for you, or a new idea for you to create for yourself. Okay, and back to the story now. Thank you so much for helping me build and grow this YouTube channel by you watching this from start to end, by playing it in the background, whatever it is. You're helping me grow this channel and you're helping me reach more people. So thank you. And may days be filled with endless opportunities for you to explore and create. Peace be with you, my friends.